Okay, on these next two problems, notice that they are not in standard form. So step 1 says I have to get it in standard form. This may take a few steps because I have to distribute and then I'll move all of the terms to one side, but I have to do that first before I proceed with any of the other steps. Okay, so I distribute there. I want to get all of the terms on, I'm going to choose to put them on the left side. I could put it on either side, but because the 1 in the front of the x squared is smaller than the 5 on the x squared, that leaves my leading coefficient positive when I like positive things. So 5 minus 1 is 4x squared. At the same time, I'm also going to subtract 8x, and that adds to 0 accidentally. I wanted it to add to 0 on the right hand side, but it accidentally also did it on the left hand side. And then I can bring down the minus 1. So that took several steps just to get it equal to 0. So step 1 is done. I'm in standard form. Step 2 says factor. This is a binomial. There is no GCF, but it is a difference of two squares. We have 2x quantity squared minus 1 squared. So this factors into 2x minus 1 and 2x plus 1. Then I'm going to set each of those factors equal to 0 because both of these factors have a variable in it. And then I'm going to solve. So that gets me 2x equals 1. Divide both sides by 2. And I get x is equal to 1/2. On the other side, I subtract 1. 2x equals negative 1. Divide both sides by 2 again. And I'm getting x is equal to negative 1/2. So my solutions are 1/2 and negative 1/2. You can put the two solutions inside the braces because it's a solved problem, and you can put them in either order. It doesn't really matter. On our next problem, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get it into standard form first. So I'm going to distribute the right-hand side. I'm getting x squared minus 4x plus 4x minus 16. Some of you might have noticed that that was a difference of squares formula, and you probably didn't need to write the 4x's because you knew that they were going to add to 0, which is fine. And then I want to get everything on one side, so I'm going to subtract the x squared so that I'm putting all of the terms on the left, which is going to leave me with a positive x squared. So those add to 0, those add to 0. So on the right-hand side, I only have equal to 0. That was the whole point. 7x squared, take away 1x squared is 6x squared. Plus 23x, that just comes down, plus 20. So step 1 is now done. I have set it equal to 0, and now it is in standard form. Step 2 says to factor completely. Well, that doesn't look like there is a GCF here at all, so I'm going to go ahead, because this is a trinomial and the leading coefficient is not equal to 1, I'm going to use my guess and check method. You may have used the AC method, which is fine. Okay, I'm going to try 2x and 3x, and then I'm going to try 4 and 5. Oh, wait a minute. Is this a good choice? Should I ever have the 2 next to the 4? I don't think that's a very good choice, so I'm going to change this up because you never have two numbers next to each other that have a GCF if the original problem doesn't have a GCF. So I'm going to change that up and I'm going to get 15x and 8x. I'm trying to add with two positives, right? Because this is the sign's the same and I need to add to a positive. Can I get to 23? Look at that. I got it on the first try. Lucky me. Well, lucky me, and I didn't choose the one that wouldn't make any sense. So I have 2x plus 5 and 3x plus 4. And there's nothing else that can be factored, so I'm completely factored. And then I set every term with a variable in it. So this term has a variable in it, so I'm going to set that term equal to 0 using the zero product property. This factor has a variable in it, so I'm going to set that equal to 0 as well. and then solve each of those independently. So I have 2x is equal to negative 5. Divide both sides by 2. So that's negative 5 halves as one of my answers. And then I'm going to subtract 4 on the other equation and divide by 3. So my other equation solution is negative 4/3. So those are my two solutions. Moving on to our next method, method 2, is called the square root method, or some books call it extraction of roots method. In order to use the square root method, the equation must be in the format, the expression must be squared, and it has to equal some number. Okay? Expression squared equals a number. So notice that if there is no linear term, well, that's like the b or the middle term, okay? In the standard form of the quadratic equation, or if b is equal to 0, then it is easy to put it in this form. So some examples are x squared equals 81. Notice that there's no x term, no linear term, no b term in this, or b is 0. So this equation is really easy to use square root method. Notice it's something squared equals number. So notice this one has no linear term, no x term or b. So it's going to be easy to put it in the form expression squared equals number. So if I add 23 to both sides, that gets me 9x squared equals 23. If I divide both sides by 9, that gets me x squared equals 23 over 9. And now it's expression squared, x squared equals some number. So now it is in the right form. This next one already is expression squared equals number. And same with the last one. Expression squared equals number. So those are all in the right form, or a good candidate for the square root method. So the steps to solve it in square root method is step 1, put the quadratic equation in the form expression squared equals a number. If it's not already in that form, it has to be put in that form in order to do this method. Otherwise, you'll have to use a different method that we'll teach you on the next lesson. Step 2, take the square root of both sides of the equation. Now, when you take the square root of both sides, you must take the plus or minus parts on that very next step. And then the last thing is to solve the equation. This one is so important. You have to take the plus or minus, because when you take the square root of both sides, it could be a positive thing being squared or a negative thing being squared to make that positive number. So you have to include both the positive and the negative parts. And we'll show you how to do that on these next few examples.